Okay, so when I was a Mormon missionary, one of the things that was a reoccurring pattern throughout the entire 2 years that I served was the fact that we were supposed to push for a baptismal date with anybody we were teaching as soon as possible, including the very first lesson that we had with them. Now, I recently saw a reel on Instagram that challenged this idea and encouraged missionaries to wait until their investigators were more prepared.
I introduced the gospel to a friend of mine here on base, and the missionaries started teaching him. It was pretty great. But in the very first lesson, the missionaries asked him to be baptized, and it freaked him out a little bit. And he said, "Well, this might be a little soon. I'm not so sure. I have to think about it." Missionary said, "That's fine. Here, read this Book of Mormon, and I'll pray about it." And the next week, we all meet up again for our second lesson. And again, the missionaries ask him, "Will you be baptized?" And this time, they said, "On this date," which was 2.5 weeks away. And their words were, "Will you prepare to be baptized?" And he replied by saying, "I don't know what that means to prepare to be baptized." And in my head, I'm thinking, he doesn't even know what it means to be baptized. These missionaries are bold. They're both zone leaders. They keep track of all of their progress. And when they have someone they're teaching who has a baptismal date set, that's another tally mark for their numbers. My friend got freaked out, and he doesn't want to meet with the missionaries anymore. My friend didn't even have an understanding of what the gospel truly is. He doesn't know what the value is by being part of this church. The only thing he knows about the main difference between us and other Christians is that they don't have a Book of Mormon. I wanted to tell them, hey, you're inviting him to be baptized too soon. I remember telling a missionary how to do their job is not something missionaries want to hear. But I knew, like, if I were a missionary and a member told me that, I would respond by saying, oh, have faith. The Lord can do miracles. Asking someone to get baptized is like asking to marry somebody. If you're not in Rexburg, don't do it the first time you meet them.
Now, this is a sentiment that I've seen repeated a lot, and I fully agree with that Mormon missionaries are pushing for baptism too fast. I know, for example, when my wife was investigating the church, back when that was important to me, and I was trying to encourage her to explore the gospel. One of the things that turned her away from the missionaries was the fact that they pushed baptism so much that they completely would push back on any questions that she had about the church or any hesitations she had about joining quickly. They were so focused on just getting her baptized that they were completely missing some really good teaching opportunities that she could have had at the time. Now, this sentiment that missionaries are asking too soon is weirdly enough also something that is being questioned by one of the leaders of the church. So I'm referring to, of course, a statement made by President Ballard. He's on the Quorum of the 12 Apostles. And in this statement, he was talking to new mission presidents that were preparing to enter the mission field and to lead missionaries. And this is all the way back in 2019. Now, he was talking about this idea that missionaries feel a lot of pressure to invite people to be baptized during the first lesson or even during first contact. But this paragraph sticks out. It says, church leaders don't know where these practices began, but it was never our intention to invite people to be baptized before they had learned something about the gospel, felt the Holy Ghost, and had been properly prepared to accept a lifelong commitment to follow Jesus Christ. This is interesting. He didn't say it's not our intention to baptize people before they're prepared. He specifically says it was never our intention to invite people to be baptized before they were prepared. Now, this goes directly against what I was taught as a missionary. See, I was taught as a missionary to give the invitation to prepare to be baptized. That's key. You were never actually asking somebody, are you ready to be baptized? It's, will you prepare yourself to be baptized by this certain date? So you're already setting a date. You're asking them to be ready to be baptized by that date. And this isn't something that was just unique to my mission. You saw in that reel by dayLogic that he had experience seeing missionaries give that invitation as well. And there's a reason for this, and it's not just a cultural thing. Elder Ballard said, we don't know why missionaries are pushing for baptism on the very first lesson. But that's crazy because we do know why missionaries push for baptism on the very first lesson. If we open Preach My Gospel, for those of you who don't know what Preach My Gospel is, this is the handbook for missionaries. It goes through all of the lessons that they need to teach. It goes through scriptural references. It goes through guidance on how to teach the lessons, how to approach missionary work, how to manage your time as a missionary, pretty much anything that a missionary would need to know. And if we go all the way down to the very first lesson, now this lesson is about the apostasy. So, the true gospel, the true church was removed from the earth. People were lost, didn't know what, direction to go, restored through Joseph Smith, basically fundamentals of why Mormonism exists in the first place. But it literally says at the end of the lesson, during this or any other lesson, do not hesitate to invite people to be baptized and confirmed. How can somebody be prepared to accept the commitment to follow Christ for the rest of their life by the end of the first lesson? Now, I can already see the criticism of the statement that I just said, because it says during this or any other lesson, right? So that's not a direct make sure you're inviting during this lesson, but we're going to look at two more things that absolutely push this. This page here, this is the fundamental study guide used in the Missionary Training Center. It says right off the bat, use the following resources to learn that the doctrine of Christ and the missionary purpose are one and the same. Learn also how to confidently invite investigators to be baptized, especially in the first visit. So before you even enter the mission field, in the Missionary Training Center, it says to invite investigators to be baptized on the very first visit. A little bit different wording than what's actually in Preach My Gospel, where it's this or any other lesson, and it's kind of a softer implication. But it's outright said in the Missionary Training Center, invite somebody to be baptized on the very first lesson. Look, there's this page here. Check your progress. Okay, so this is a way where you're supposed to give yourself an evaluation of how often you do certain things. And right here it says, I invite my investigators to be baptized in the first lesson. You're supposed to check your progress on this. Do you never do this? Do you sometimes do this? Do you often do this? Almost always or always? And obviously, as a missionary, you are striving for perfect obedience. You always want to do something. So if you are not inviting investigators to be baptized on the very first lesson, then you are not fulfilling your missionary purpose. So for Elder Ballard to say that we don't know why missionaries do this is absolutely absurd, because every step of the way in training the missionaries and then implementing missionary work absolutely pushes for baptismal invites to be given on the very first lesson.